Hi, folks. Do that again. Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your pushback channel. I'll try that one more time. Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about non-white, or I suppose white and non-white perceptions of racism. Now, racism is the intense dislike, hatred, or taking serious issue with someone solely on the basis of their skin color and nothing else. I'd be hard pressed to find any people who are racist on that basis. So what we've got is a word game that's going on, fostered and funded by the globalists and the people they control and the media they control. That is gladly taken up by the third world countries. Because then everyone in the third world wants to move to the white first world, and so any objection white people have to having these brown and black hordes coming into the West, well, it's got to be racism. What else can it be? They're all damn fucking fascist Nazis. Nothing else to it. So we need to just look at what how the international media, again, globalist controlled, globalist funded, nearly all of it, but how the international media in the non-white countries perceives racism. Now, their perception is, well, we're entitled to go into white countries by the tens, hundreds of millions. We're entitled to do that. And if any white people don't like it, they must be racist. It must be because they're racist. There's no other reason. Now, again, the international sort of UN and the globalist machine has given them that and said to them that well, that's what it is. That's the cause. Now, it's not that at all. I don't think anybody minds, people coming to visit as students or study generally, or they want a 6-month work visa, or tourists, or anything like that. I mean, people fall in love. Like, it doesn't mean that someone in a white English person doesn't mean they can't marry a brown or black person, or anything. Like, people still fall in love. It doesn't. That's not prevented. Now, would many of those situations occur? No. Would the students then go back to their countries of origin when they finish studying? Well, yeah, okay, that's fine too. Would people on 6-month or 12-month work visas then go back to their countries of origin? Yeah, no one's got a problem with any of that. But what people in the West don't like, and I'm hard pressed to find people who do like it. The rich don't mind it as long as it doesn't affect them. The minute it affects them, then they've got a problem with it, as we saw in Martha's Vineyard in the United States. Then the army will be called out to get rid of these low class, vulgar, illegal aliens. But as long as these illegals are in the poorer suburbs and come over to mow the lawns and clean the swimming pools and so on, then it's fine. But the reality is, bringing in masses and masses of people who don't share your language, don't share your culture, don't share your history, don't want to integrate, even look, think that all white people are bad, and there's something that's helped along by the globalist machine, very much so helped along by the globalist machine. Then the local white people have got, why are all these folks coming in? They're not needed. They're artificially dampening down wages. They're forming ghettos where, 20, 30, 40 years after they've arrived, they still only talk in their home country language. Their children still send back to the village of their ancestors for brides and husbands. They've got no intention of integrating or having anything to do with white people. They keep away from white people, but then they accuse us white folks of being the racists. That's a bit rich. So the issue isn't to do with people's skin or anything like that. It's to do with behaviour in the ghettos and these people, even after multiple generations. And there's Islamic folks, Indians as well, third, fourth, fifth generation in the West, they still see themselves as Indian or still see themselves as Pakistani, and again, no intention of integrating or anything like. Happy to take the money from the white folks, but that's as far as it goes. In 99, point whatever percent of the cases, that there are some intermarrying, but a very small amount. So the issue the white people have is the mass migration, which is forced on them without their consent. So it's the mass migration and without their consent. That's the issue. And they don't like masses of brown and black people coming into the white countries. Now, the Indian media is so hair trigger. And a lot of it's very nationalist. Well, the Indian media is super nationalist about India. If they do it, they're only sticking up for their country. But if white media outlets behave in the same way and put positive light on white countries like Britain, then they're being fascists and Nazis. But the Indian people are just sticking up for themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. It's okay when we do it. It's evil and fascist and Nazi when you do it. When the white folks do it. So the white people, I can't find anyone who's against people just on the colour of their skin. I don't think anyone cares. I mean, it's hard to find anyone anywhere who thinks so. I'm sure if you kept looking hard enough, you'd find somebody. But it's difficult to, for me, I just don't meet those people that are around. I meet people that have been vociferous about mass migration. And again, the main thing about mass migration is how large groups of people come along, congregate in ghettos. They take over entire suburbs. You can't hear English spoken anywhere in these areas. People are concerned. Why is my country and my neighbourhood changing without my consent? That's the issue that it keeps on coming back to. Now, had there been a national referendum saying, "Look, we want to bring in millions of black and brown people," very few, if any, are going to speak English. You poorer folks are going to have your wages reduced. Whole suburbs will be taken over by these people, and they won't have anything to do with you, and they won't speak the language, and all this sort of stuff. Then you can imagine a referendum there where white people are having to vote on that. It would be crushed. I mean, it'd be 90% plus. People would be against it. So mass migration was forced on white people without their consent. And this is something that all the media outfits around the black and brown country media outfits, they just fail to accept that. If they looked and said, well, this is what the white people are, shouldn't they have had a referendum? I mean, why are these things being done against without their consent? It's meant to be a democracy. Why weren't they asked? Don't their leaders say that they live in a democracy, and yet these things are forced on them? They have a reason to be upset. But no, they don't. They just take the straight racist, fucking fascist, Nazi, fucking Hitler racist. That's what they are. And that's not true. It's simply not true. Now, why don't the Indian media say, well, China should take 300 or 400 million Indian peasants? Why don't they? It's because they're fascist, Nazi, racist, damn fucking racist. Why won't they take India and China right next to each other? The Indians only need to cross the border. Why not? Why not China? Well, yeah, you racist fucking fascists. Why don't you take 300 or 400 million Indian peasants? I mean, they're starving here. Why don't you take them? But the Indians don't do that. The Indian media never holds the Chinese up as being, racist for not taking hundreds of millions of Indians. Hold on a minute. Why aren't the Chinese evil for not doing it? Why don't you have a few 100 million Indians going to the Middle East and Saudi Arabia? And why don't you do that? Why don't you tell them that they're racist for not taking their rich oil states? They could afford a whole lot there, but you don't. And so only white countries are singled out as being racist. Only white countries are singled out as being racist. So it just shows you what fucking hypocrites these people are. They don't believe right people. They just want the right to go at any time they choose to a first world country, the richest countries in the world that have, rule of law and due legal process, all these things that they want to benefit from, but only when it suits them. And they want, Indians in particular think they should have the right to come and go to Britain whenever the fuck they feel like it. And if there's even the slightest, or to the United States, Canada and Australia and so on, if there's even the slightest delay with processing paperwork, racism, that's it, that Hitler, fascist, Nazi, racists. Now the black people are, Africans are again, fairly similar in that regard. And if you look at the African media, it's not quite as chip on shoulder as the Indian media, but they seem to think that anything they want that they don't get, they scream racist, or fascist or bigot or whatever, because it's an easy way. It's a lazy way of getting what you want. You don't have to work hard. You don't do anything. You don't have to justify anything. You don't have to prove anything. You just scream racist, and that's it. Everyone falls about and begs for forgiveness, and it's a great accusation to hurl, and no one ever asks you to back it up or prove it. Now, there's one Indian program I saw, and it's a very nationalist news network. Claim they're impartial, but that's utter bullshit. And they were talking about the Ukraine war and saying that and they were heavily editing the clips to sort of project the propaganda they wanted to, but there was one commentator was saying, we see a lot of refugees and so on coming out of the Middle East and Africa, and for famines and this, that, and the next thing, but you don't often see white people from the greater European area as refugees. So they clipped the before and after and just had, you don't often see white people. And there you go. This is proof that they are racist. And then they got another couple of clips, again heavily edited. So if you are blonde and blue-head, then and it was just a ridiculous bit of silly propaganda. Again, very typical of the Indian chip on shoulder type attitudes. So in America, they can just murder a black man called George Floyd. And the way they describe George Floyd, he's this innocent angel, this guy with no criminal record. He is absolutely an absolute the perfect citizen. The perfect citizen, just walking along the street, minding their business. This damn fucking Nazi, fascist, racist cops just come and random murder him. They pull out bazookas, they tear him to pieces. They use their teeth to rip him apart. The way they build this up, there's no. Well, hold on a minute. You're talking about a guy who was a career criminal, multiple arrests, multiple prison time, multiple episodes in prison rather. A violent career criminal who's off his face on a drug overdose, who's trying to pass counterfeit, who's refusing police instructions and directives to, he's resisting arrest and refusing police, and he dies of the overdose while they're attempting to, the police are attempting to detain him. It's not a murder. He wasn't murdered in police custody. What bullshit! But they present these things about blacks are being randomly shot everywhere. This is proof that the white people are racist. And again, they invent all this, and so you see this all around the world. Now, if they did balanced reporting, then that they wouldn't report it that way. So their intention is to deceive and misinform, and that comes across loud and clear. Nor do they ever interview someone who presents the other side. They only interview people that present whites in a negative light. Yes, I've been the victim of racism. White people, they just run around murdering everybody random. When I got off the plane at the airport, there was machine guns shooting all black people. I mean, it's that sort of hysterical, stupid reporting. Now, there are other sort of like there was one where somehow a Singaporean girl who's married to an English white guy, and she's obviously been in for a while. Like, she doesn't speak this English language. Her English is quite good. Very little accent, some, but not very much. And she somehow got a gig to ferret out the evil fascist racists in Britain. And she, again, it was a heavily edited sort of thing, but she's talking to somebody from um, what's billed as a far-right group, but in reality they're just against mass immigration without the consent of the people. If the people decide they want mass immigration and it's decided in a referendum, fine, then these folks will accept it. They don't think multiculturalism works, and I don't believe it does either, and very few people you'll find say it works. The talking heads on the media and the globalist controlled flunkies will say that, but no one else does. So the reality is that so on this interview, they heavily edited and they cut out the bits where she was talking about multiculturalism doesn't work and there should be mass migration doesn't work. There should be a referendum and there should be with the people's consent. They cut all that stuff out and do loaded questions. Uh, do you think brown people like me are allowed in England? Do you think? And they just drop these stupid, ridiculous loaded questions. And again, heavy editing to make it look like they're dealing with a serious super fascist Nazi. When in reality, these people don't say that. So even the most radical right wing, and if you want to call it right wing, I'm not sure you would, but even the most radical parties that I'm aware of in England, who are very, very small parties, they still say, look, mass migration without the consent of the people is wrong, and I don't think you'd find anyone would disagree with that. So when you're looking at this idea of or anyone's looking at it, the media of is there racism just on the basis of colour, on the basis of white people, looking at the colour of someone's skin, you'd be really hard pressed to find anyone. Can you find people who don't like mass migration? Can you find people who don't like forced multiculturalism? Can you find people who don't like their communities being changed without their consent? Then sure, that you can find those people, but they're the ones that are being treated as hysterical fascist Nazi racists. When none of these countries would accept. What about in Africa? Let's move 100 million Indians into your country, Nigeria. Oh, you don't want it? Oh, you don't like it? Oh, you fucking fascist Nazis. No, nobody wants that. No country wants it. No country likes it. No country has been, in human history, has been able to make it work. Small numbers being brought in gradually, they can integrate over time, and that might work, but not the sort of numbers that are coming. To give you some idea, in the last 20 years in Australia, the population has grown by, or just through migration of brown and black people, mostly brown, the population has grown by more than 25% in that time. Again, without the consent of the people. And the people are being told in the West, the white West, being told the most terrible lies. It's because of the skills shortage. A shortage that literate third world peasants are somehow going to fix. We need more workers we need more nurses, and that's why we have to bring people in. But there's those are all lies. If they paid nurses more or gave them better conditions, they wouldn't have problems getting nurses. It's because they want to artificially bypass market forces and pay nurses shit money. That's why they've got a shortage of nurses, and no other reason. But when you see this, the way that the international media propaganda narrative works, only white people are racist. Only white people are bad. No other people are racist or can be racist or ever were racist, which has got to be one of the biggest, most grotesque, horrible, unspeakable untruths that you could ever come across. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.